because that was an era when the competition was very intense.
Well, everyone's got to work to the same goal, which is obviously to surprise the rest of the teams.
Coming up in our 1-hour program, we'll show you extended highlights of the final round of the inaugural Asia Le Mans Series from Sepang, Malaysia, with the championship set to be decided. We'll take a closer look at Taiwan's AAI Rastrada team, who are looking good to qualify for the 24 Hours of Le Mans race next year. Plus, we'll hear from their main rivals for that prize, Craft Racing, as they expand into the LMP2 prototype division for the first time. We'll burn some rubber with the Michelin crew as we find out exactly what goes into the making of race car tires. And we'll show you all the sights and sounds from this turbocharged weekend. So sit back, hold tight and join us for the final round of the Asia Le Mans Series. Before we get into the action from Sepang, let's take a quick look back at the season so far. The Asia Le Mans Series kicked off in style at the Inje Stadium in South Korea. An early downpour couldn't dampen the team's enthusiasm, and China's KCMG team were crowned the overall champions of the 3 Hours of Inje, while the team also claimed the LMP2 title. Gary Thompson misjudged the time and actually won the race from the pit lane, while AF Corsairs Ferrari 458 took the checkered flag but finished second overall, while Oak Racing's Morgan Judd was third. Taishan Ken Endless's Kamui Kobayashi and Naoki Yokomizu, both from Japan, drove skillfully and tirelessly to complete the 3 hours in their Ferrari 458 GTE to take the GTE title. Taishan also claimed second place in the GTC class with their Porsche 996 GT300. Round 2 took place in Fuji, Japan, and with 10 Super GT teams from Japan also taking part in a separate class, was perhaps even more exciting with 20 cars on the grid. China's KCMG made it 2 wins from 2 in both the LMP2 class and the overall standings, but were pushed all the way by France's Oak Racing. Oak had started in pole position, but KCMG's Hiroshi Koizumi was able to pass Oak's Jeffrey Lee early on. Koizumi's teammate James Winslow and Richard Bradley then did enough to drive the number 18 Morgan Nissan to victory, despite Oak's Frankie Cheng posting the fastest lap of the day. In the GTE class, Taishan Ken Endless's Ferrari 458 GTE again snagged top spot for the Japanese team. Hong Kong's Craft Racing, who had been looking very quick in Inje before falling victim to technical issues, made amends in Fuji with first place in the GTC class. That pushed Inje GTC winner AF Corsair into second, with Japan's Pacific Direction Racing's Porsche 911 GT3R in third. It was on to Zhuhai in southern China for round 3, and after being unable to convert pole position into a race win at both Inje and Fuji, Oak Racing made it third time lucky in the LMP2 class. KCMG started from the back of the grid, but soon closed to within a few seconds of the lead. But Oak's all-Chinese team hung on to claim a maiden victory and extend the championship into the final race of the season. Japan's Taishan Ken Endless secured their third straight victory in the GTE class, close in on the title as they continued their unbeaten streak. Meanwhile, in the GTC division, AF Corsair secured the title with their second win of the year, thereby clinching the first of 2 invitations to next year's 24 Hours of Le Mans. But the battle for that second invitation could barely be closer. Craft Racing lie in second with 42 points after a third place finish in Zhuhai, but AAI Rastrada closed the gap to just 2 points after finishing second, and China's BBT team still have an outside chance. Now we're caught up on the rest of the season, let's take a look at what to expect from the finale here in Malaysia. A fascinating Asian country with a mix of modern skylines and old-style settings, and is known for its warm hospitality by day and by night, and of course, delicious food. Situated 85 kilometers from downtown Kuala Lumpur, Sepang International Circuit is comfortably the longest track of the season. 15 turns and more than 5.5 kilometers in length, with 2 long straights at the end of each lap. With speeds of over 300 kilometers per hour and plenty of overtaking opportunities, it always ensures a race full of drama and action. Fresh off a second-place finish in Zhuhai, Japanese driver Takeshi Tsuchiya from the AAI Rastrada team took a lap especially for us in his BMW Z4. Let's take a look at how he sees all the twists and turns from behind the wheel and listen to Takeshi's tips and tricks.
Hello, I'm Takeshi Tsuchiya, Team AAI Rastrada with BMW Z4. So, this circuit is Sepang International F1 circuit, so it's my qualifying lap. So, home straight, 240 kilometers. So, braking zone is a big gap, so a little bit oversteer. So, first and second corner is very slow corner. So car is understeered because tire is very hard compound. So this condition. Then fourth gear, fifth gear, keep on the fifth gear. So braking zone also it has a gap. Then next high speed S corner. So keep on fourth gear. Then very important, so throttle and steering, so have to be careful, so nice and smooth. Okay, then next gear for third gear. Then very important is the exit of speed, so this point. So next third gear, fourth gear, fifth gear, those braking. The fourth gear and fifth gear, so hairpin is the second gear. Then also big braking. Then up here is the second to third gear to full throttle. Then next corner is a blind corner, very difficult to see. So I'm very nervous car. Also third gear keep, fourth gear, next high speed. So just lift off. Back straight, so third gear, fourth gear, or fifth gear to sixth gear. Then next, so big braking to before final corner. Then very smooth driving. Then also very important exit of speed. So the second gear, third gear, fourth gear, then home straight. Thank you for joining me, Sepang International F1 circuit, so my qualifying lap.
On to the main race, and here's how the cars line up for the final race of the season. KCMG take pole position with Oak Racing right next to them, and we've got 3 cars in the LMP2 division. GTC division is led by Clearwater Racing, who line up 4th on the grid. And as the lights go green for the final race of the year, watch on the left-hand side of the grid as Richard Bradley's number 27 Craft Racing Oreca 03 swings wide and goes around James Winslow, who had started in pole position. That allowed David Cheng on the right of the picture to move up into the lead, and Winslow looked to be going backwards but regained his composure and slotted into 3rd place before soon taking 2nd. The Asian Le Mans Series employs a rolling start, and the cars must maintain formation until the lights go green, but once they do, all bets are off. On board now with Winslow's number 18 KCMG Morgan Nissan now for this replay of the start, and watch first as Cheng goes first to the left, and then Bradley passes on his right and brakes hard into the corner. Stefan Muke, one of Winslow's Craft's teammate in the Aston Martin Vantage GT3, also goes past him for a moment, but Winslow retakes him on the inside of turn 1. Let's take another view of the start, this time on board with Takeshi Tsuchiya in the number 91. Tsuchiya started in 7th on the grid and slipped down a place as the red Ferrari of AF Corse edges past him on the left as the lights go green, but a poor start from Weng Sun Mok in the Clearwater number 33 car saw him slide from 4th to 8th by the end of the first lap, allowing Tsuchiya here to stay in 7th overall and 4th in his class. In the GTE category, Tyson's number 70, as we ride on board with him now, started in 10th and was almost immediately caught and passed by his main rival, AAI Rastrada's number 35. Richard Bradley, meanwhile, had passed Cheng for the lead on lap 1 and was opening up a sizable gap at the front. But Winslow and Cheng remained locked in a battle for second. As we take a look now of this wonderful helicopter shot, just showing how close the cars are racing hard here at Sepang. Meanwhile, on board with Marco Siegfried, who was able to get the number 35 AAI Restrada off to a good start, building up a solid lead over Tyson in the first hour. And there were battles for position in midfield throughout the race, with multiple overtakes while the cars remained so close. David Cheng in the number 18 car then started to pull clear in second, but was already more than half a minute down on leader Richard Bradley, who continued his searing pace. In the GTC AM category, Gamma team were enjoying a good midfield scrap until disaster struck. Michael Huang was forced to return to the pits as early as lap 13, and despite the team's hard work, was unable to return to the track. Takeshi Tsuchiya in the number 91 had a difficult start, losing 3 places over the opening 20 laps. Tsuchiya's lap times were pretty consistent, but he was lacking the pace of some of the other cars. Steve Wyatt in the AF Corsair had a decent start and gained 2 places in the opening stage. He, however, was the first GTC driver to pit. He pitted 3 laps before the actual race leader, Richard Bradley, came in for his pit stop.
Yeah, it's obviously a great feeling. I got the start a little bit too good, and I had to brake to avoid hitting the back of the KCMG car. But then I managed to get the first guy at turn 1, and then managed to get David around the outside at turn 9. Then it was just a case of pushing. The track's a little bit different today, and it was made particularly difficult because somebody dropped oil out there. So I just think, you know, a lot of people were having trouble, including myself. I thought I had a puncture at one point. But yeah, it's great. New team to come here and lead the race like that is great, but it's a 3-hour race. We've got to keep on going.
Wise words from Bradley in Craft Racing's LMP2 series debut. And he had given his team a 40-second lead over KCMG's David Cheng, but could only then watch as his teammates tried to protect the lead. James Winslow was already lapping the Aston Martin of Stefan Muke in 4th place, showing the superior power of the LMP2 car, and Winslow briefly went into the lead after pitting a lap or 2 after Bradley and Cheng. Winslow handed over to teammate Sugiya Matsuda, but the changeover was not the smoothest, and KCMG rejoined in 3rd, 15 seconds behind Oak, having earlier been 30 seconds ahead. One of the most exciting elements of the Asian Le Mans series is that the different classes create mini battles within the overall race. You can see Ho Ping Tung now in Oak's number 24 Morgan Judd flashing his lights and clearly wanting Marco Siegfried to make way so he could chase the leaders. But Siegfried was 6th overall and crucially 15 seconds ahead of Tyson's number 70 at this point, so he didn't want to yield any more than necessary. Now, it's important to remember in endurance racing that even when the cars are not actually changing positions in the overall scheme of things, they are still constantly negotiating other cars on track as the different classes of race cars travel at different speeds. For example, on Siegfried's final lap before coming into the pits, he ceded track position to Sugio Matsuda in the number 18 Morgan Nissan, who was at this point already 1 lap ahead of Siegfried. The Tyson car came into the pits roughly 15 seconds behind GTE rival AAI Restrada. The drivers are always quick to thank the dozens of mechanics and crew working behind the scenes to get these cars to perform at their best for a full 3 hours. And the 2 cars had very similar pit stops, rejoining in roughly the same position. But this time, Shoko Mitsuyama now behind the wheel. Taiwanese team AAI Restrada are well placed to clinch the 2nd GTC class invitation to the 24 Hours of Le Mans race next year. Let's take a look at how the team from a small island is hoping to go global.
I was a touring car driver at the last more than 15 years, just racing in the local and in the Asian touring car. I think we are the new team in the GT race in the Asian. I'm Takeshi, so Japanese racing driver. So about 20 years over, I'm racing in Japan. I'm very happy to join AI Rivalry team.
My name is Markus Siegfried. I'm 37 years old. I come in from Germany, and I'm now in motorsport since 23 years. So I started with go-karting quite the classical way. Went then to Formula cars after I joined then GT cars. And aside that, I'm also a mechanic. So I worked a lot on Porsche. So that's why I'm quite related to Porsche since the last 10, 11 years.
We are a champion touring car team, but within the touring car, just some local, maybe Asian driver. Usually, the touring car just maybe 12 lap, 15 lap, and within the month is 3 hour endurance race. So for the driver, for the service team, and for the car, it's a more hard job.
As long as Le Mans inside the series name, it means it comes up to real professional GT racing or LMP racing. And also with the Porsche, it's kind of a special car because it has it's I think unique that the car has the engine on the back end, and that makes it difficult for the rear tires because Malaysia is also famous for being really hot, and the Porsche suffers a lot with the rear tires. So that's why we won't be the quickest in the qualifying, but we look for a consistent, solid setup for the race.
Usually we race 2 GTC cars, but this race we run 1 GTC, 1 GTE. GTC is a little bit better, but the GTE have a better the search performance. Of course, so everyone has a dream of 24 hours of Le Mans. I hope to do our best, and I hope to go on to the podium.
Stefan Mueck in the Kraft Aston Martin Vantage 007 car had reached a crucial stage in the race, knowing he had to keep ahead of the number 91 for his team to clinch an invitation to next year's 24 Hours of Le Mans. He stayed out as long as he could before pitting, but as his tyres wore down, his lap times had begun to slow. Meanwhile, both AF Corse and Clearwater had switched drivers earlier, and Andrea Bertolini and Tony Villander were putting in some blistering times on fresh rubber. By the time Mueck handed over to Keita Sawa after a longer than usual pit stop, the car had been overtaken by both AF Corse and Clearwater. Meanwhile, due to a combination of pit stop strategies and daring overtaking maneuvers, barely a lap went by when there wasn't at least one change in positions. In addition, the LMP2 cars were turning the screw. Here, Sugio Matsuda blows past the Porsche of Rastrada's GTE team. The AAI Rastrada's team's other entry was a BMW Z4, a switch from the McLaren MP4 12C used by the team in previous rounds. As was common given the hot weather and scorching Sepang track, Takeshi Tsuchiya's lap time slowed towards the end of his stint, and he was also adjusting to the new car.
How is the BMW performing against the McLaren, which you would normally run at a race like this?
Yes, so cornering performance is very good, but so straight line is so still race. So during race, so we have a chance. So anyway, I push.
With the 007 Aston Martin still in 6th place overall and 3rd in GTC, time was running out for BBT team of China's Anthony Liu and Italia's Davide Rizzo and Fabio Babini. They had to win the division and have other results go their way to try and get that coveted Le Mans invitation. Up at the front, with Dan Poli half a minute clear in first, Ho Ping Tung was just about keeping Japanese ace at bay in the battle for second, but there was nothing in it. Marco Seefried's number 35 Porsche then suffered a technical problem and had to return to the pits, crippling Rastrada's bid for GTE victory.
Marco, it's almost halfway through the 3 hours. You seem to have some troubles with the car. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened?
I heard we have some problems with the throttle body, so the car is not taking the throttle for the acceleration. I do not know. I hadn't any problem in my stint throughout this 1 hour. The car went well. I could really overtake also my contrand. I could catch up some GT3s. It was in plan, so the setup also for the stint under those conditions, very warm, very hot at the moment. Really fine. So far we were really on plan.
The team eventually managed to get the car back out on track. Meanwhile, there was no let-up for Ho Ping Tung as he continued to hold off a charging Sugio Matsuda. Clearwater's Ferrari 458 GT3 was closing the gap on the GTC division leader AF Corse. Meanwhile, the Taisan team car number 70, shown here lapping one of the GTC AM cars for the third time, was looking good for a fourth straight win in the GTE class. Then, on lap 37 with an hour and 20 minutes gone, Matsuda finally found his way past Ho Ping Tung and sprinted clear. Up ahead, leader Dan Poli was held up for a number of laps by AF Corse's Andrea Bertolini, the vastly experienced endurance racer from Italy who was in fact 2 laps behind Poli. Their battle allowed Clearwater's Tony Villander to close the gap on Bertolini for 4th and then pass him on lap 41. Meanwhile, Sugio Matsuda was making his way through the field and here manages to go past Poli to take the race lead. Poli was struggling on old tires as Matsuda immediately pulls away and puts some distance between the two of them. Matsuda then mopped up some of the back markers, and here we can see him lapping the Taisan car for the third time as he pushed towards the end of his stint. The onboard cameras give you a real sense of what these drivers experience and also show you just how powerful these prototype cars are. This Porsche itself, no slouch, is being lapped by the Morgan Nissan for the 7th time in over 90 minutes. Poli brought Kraft's car into the pits after 45 laps, shortly after losing the lead, and with both the other LMP2 cars having completed their second pit stop, his teammate Jun Jinpoo was to rejoin the race in 3rd place, already nearly a minute down on 2nd place. Sepang is an extremely difficult track to master. Let's hear from Dan Poli after his stint in the car.
Certainly for my stint, started off well, got into the reference time and but encompassed traffic, lost a bit of time there, and then the drop off of the tyres was significantly more than we'd expected. I believe the Oak team were forced into an early pit stop because of it. When we were passed on track by KCMG, I believe they were just on fresh rubber, so you can really see the difference a new set of boots makes.
Michelin is one of the oldest and most famous tyre companies in the world and has been the official tyre supplier of the Asian Le Mans series since the start of the championship. Let's take a look at exactly how much goes into the manufacturing of one of the most important parts of a race car.
Because I've been with Michelin for 36 years already. Everybody says, oh yes, 36 years, but it has been very quick. Started in a passenger car as a test driver, back to race car, which was my first love. Endurance is a very good challenge for Michelin because you need to combine performance and longevity and to make progress for the sports car and even for the luxury car sometimes. So between a wet and a slick tire, obviously the slick tire has no tread pattern when the wet tire has a tread pattern, definitely. to evacuate the water. It's a little bit more complicated because also the compounds are different. If you use a wet tire in normal condition, it means it's wet, so you work with lower temperature, so you can afford to bring softer compound. Because also you don't play with the same lateral G acceleration that you will be on the slick, you can also play a little bit with the structure of the tire that we call the casing. The most obvious is the tread, but nothing inside is the same. When you want to play with tires, first you need to know what is the regulation. One of the reasons of Michelin doing racing is that we want to improve the street tires, and the track is a perfect way to learn about that. And endurance is even better because you have already this balance of performance. You know, we have developed a new concept for street tires that we call total performance, which is safety, fuel efficiency, mileage performance, and this is what we call total performance. One of the challenges for 2014 Le Mans is to make the racing tire lighter. We hope we'll be able to save between 6 and 8 kilos per car, which is huge for a racing car. Of course, this is not something that you decide overnight. Michelin, but also Asian Le Mans and all the other partners are very happy that the first year ended up a nice way. And this first year was very important for the future, and I think Asian Le Mans is on a good track for years.
The nature of endurance racing is such that with so many cars and so many pit stops, as well as drivers of differing abilities, any two cars can be either mismatched or competitive at different points of the race. The two Rastrada cars were actually 5 laps apart here, but posted almost identical times for 18 laps. In short, you never know what's coming next. Race leader Sugio Matsuda was putting in some quick laps, passing the Aston Martin here. But behind him, Ho Ping Tung was carving through the back markers, lapping even quicker in his Morgan Judd. Matsuda came into the pits on lap 50, a full 12 laps after Oak had completed their second pit stop. No driver change this time, but when Matsuda rejoined, he was just a fraction ahead of Tung in what was arguably to be the most exciting section of the race, and all after nearly 2 hours of strategy and speed. The Rastrada car had recovered well after its lengthy pit stop midway through the race, and Japanese Super GT driver Ryohei Sakaguchi was putting in some consistently fast times despite plenty of traffic. We ride on board now with car number 35, the AAI Rastrada, under pressure from the silver-orange car number 33. This Sepang circuit demands all your attention, all of the time. Now sit back and enjoy this one. Jun Jin Poo in his Orica down the straight goes past both the Craft Racing and BBT car. Now just remember, he's overtaken an Aston Martin and a Lamborghini and made it look oh so easy. The action just keeps on coming. Here's the very same Aston Martin just moments later, involved in a big spin on lap 50, allowing BBT's Lamborghini to finally go past before the 009 Craft Racing can get himself back on track. Here's one of the 3 stops by GTC AM Mike Racing team, who weren't quite able in the end to catch Prime Mantle's third driver, Dilantha Malagamua, despite his teammates' earlier puncture problem, but the two fought right to the end. It's always good to see new teammates in the ever-inclusive Asian Le Mans Series, which bodes well for the future, proving that the series is able to engage each individual market by attracting local teams.
How's your car been performing this race?
But on tyre, we are good, but I think it's because of the weather. I think our engine temperature is a bit high. We got a cut off on the engine rev. That's why we have to slow down a few times and to come back only can full throttle. The tyre, we're doing good. We're okay on the tyre. I think because of the tyre pressure we set up is correctly, because this is our circuit. We know the weather well, so we don't have any problem with the tyres.
So you think the car will make the distance? You think you'll be there at the end of the checkered flag?
Hopefully, finger crossed. I think I will. Yeah, we will. Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Rick.
Back at the front, the three LMP2 cars were continuing to push. They had been separated by just a third of a second in qualifying, and each team led the race itself at various points. 2 hours in, KCMG and Oak were still within a few seconds of each other, with the championship on the line, and absolutely no margin for error as the race entered the final hour. The BBT team had a disappointing qualifying session, starting 9th on the grid. But the drivers picked up some places as the race went on, briefly in 4th before the pit stop, and the whole crew, wearing the mandatory fire protection suits of course, were given their full workout. Just 2 laps after KCMG's second pit stop, Sugio Matsuda had ceded position to Ho Ping Tung, who was putting in some of the quickest laps of the race and almost immediately began to put daylight between his Morgan Judd and Matsuda's Morgan Nissan. Meanwhile, the GTC battle was also hotting up. Clearwater, in its series debut, had remained in the division lead since the halfway mark, ahead of AF Corsair, who had already wrapped up the division championship. That left 007 Aston Martin Vantage in a battle here with the AAI Restrada Porsche as the favourite to come second in the class. The next pit stop by the AAI Restrada BMW is a perfect example of how all members of a team need to be pulling together in the same direction. The returning driver immediately helps strap in the new driver while the crew go to work. And while these stops are much longer than Formula 1, for example, given the amount of fuel needed for a 3-hour race, every second is precious. Moments later, the Taisan car was next in the pit lane. The Japanese team's trio of drivers, Naoki Yokomizo, Akira Ida and Shugo Mitsuyama, was the same lineup who had taken victory at Zhuhai, with each driver also racing in one other race earlier on in the season. On paper, of course, the Taisan team was primarily racing just one other car in its division, but the GTC and GTE cars are pretty well matched. For those new to the sport, GTC stands for Grand Touring Challenge and is the entry point for many teams into endurance racing, with the cars close to production models. That compares to GTE, or Grand Touring Endurance, which are typically sports cars like Ferrari or Porsches. With less than an hour to go, Jun Jinpu was gamely trying to claw back any time he could on the lead 2 cars before handing over to Richard Bradley for the final stint. He was about a minute and a half down at this point, but still lapping well. Meanwhile, Oak's lead over KCMG at the front was only about 15 seconds. But with one more stint to come from each team, it was far from over, with KCMG doing everything they could to protect their lead in the standings. Anyone who argues that endurance racing is boring should sit down and watch this next clip. On board with Craft Racing's Jun Jinpu in the Oreca, and he's putting a lot of pressure on the 007 Aston Martin in front of him. Then, from behind, come Oak Racing's Ho Ping Tung to lap Poo momentarily before the Craft man goes past the Aston Martin. Poo sizes up Tung for a while, before Tung then peels off to go off into the pits, leaving Poo to take a run at another back marker. More than 2 hours into the race, the pressure is on and the drivers can't switch off for a moment. Here is Tung now into the pits, and Oak's decision to pit on lap 65 meant that KCMG's Suguya Matsuda was once again at the front of the field. His new lead was almost exactly a minute, but Tung's team was lightning fast in the pits, and he was in good shape knowing that Matsuda still had to come in for fuel at some stage. And with Tung on fresh tyres, the new lead for KCMG was getting smaller by the lap. Down to the business end of the race now, and Keita Sawa was still in great position for the Craft 007 team, 6th overall, but on course to pick up the second and final Le Mans invitation. The heat of the day was over, but the track was still cooking. There was some concern that the hot, dry weather that had lasted all weekend might yet give way to showers, but fortunately the gathering clouds did no more than threaten. Craft number 27 driver Jun Jin Poo was trying to keep pace with the other two LMP2 cars, even if he was a lap down at this stage. But as teammate Richard Bradley wisely pointed out earlier, endurance racing is a marathon, not a sprint, and technical problems can still strike at any time. Poo then came into the pits, handing back over to Richard Bradley for Craft's final stint. The Briton rejoined the race in third, more in hope than expectation of moving up a place. But it had still been an extremely competitive showing by the Craft team. With half an hour to go, KCMG was still leading, but had to come into the pits one final time. Matsuda stayed behind the wheel, but the refuel and tyre change for KCMG gave Oak the opportunity to go ahead, and hoping Tung did not let that chance slip away, putting in a fabulous final stint, which included the race's fastest lap of 2 minutes, 0.411 seconds. Tung knew that a win would give Oak not just their second win of the season, but also the LMP2 Team Championship, and with it, an invitation to the 2014 24 Hours of Le Mans race. Matsuda knew that he had to give everything to keep the championship alive and push very hard till the very end. But with tyres and driver concentration both wearing down as the race entered the final half hour, there was more chance than ever that one mistake could decide one of the titles on offer. The Aston Martin was still pressing hard as time was running out for the Rostrada team to mount a significant attack. Sugio Matsuda was still roaring round the track in his Morgan Nissan, and the hope now that the success of the KCMG team, together with that of Oak Racing, will inspire more teams from Asia to work their way up the pyramid of endurance racing, with these LMP2 cars used as a springboard to move up to the top level of prototypes, the LMP1 cars, and qualify regularly for the 24 Hours of Le Mans race and the FIA World Endurance Championship. Asian Le Mans Series rules dictate that at least one driver from each team must be from Asia in order to further promote and develop motorsports in this part of the world, particularly since so many young drivers still seek their fame and fortune in Europe. Back on board with the Rostrada car number 35 here, being overtaken at high speed by the AF Corse car. Then just moments later, Oaks hoping Tung did the same as he marches on towards the front. All the drivers lose an enormous amount of fluid during their stints, particularly because of the hot temperatures typically found at racetracks here in Asia, and it certainly has added an extra element of toughness to the debut season of the Asia Le Mans Series. In fact, some of the drivers from Europe might be feeling the heat right at this stage of the race. But one of the teams that are right at home here are Hong Kong-based Craft Racing. The Craft Racing team has truly embraced the spirit of Le Mans by entering a car in the LMP2 prototype class in Sepang, as well as adding another entry in the GTC division. Ahead of the race, we spoke to the team to talk about their debut season and find out their plans for the future.
Well, I'm from Ireland and I got into motor racing a couple of years ago just as a bit of fun. It's been a new experience. I wouldn't be used to this level of feedback and dealing with engineers, but it's extremely helpful. Everyone's kind of working to the same goal.
I started karting when I was 8 years old, and then I did karting up to an international world-class level. We're going to create a bit of a random unknown. We've got nothing to lose. We're going to go out for the win, and we've got absolutely nothing to lose. So it's win or bust for us, because this is the first round of the championship for the team. We can't win it.
So I'm 31, back in Germany, and then was for 5 years for Mercedes factory driver in DTM. Started racing, I've been doing karting when I was a little boy, and I picked up GT racing about 6-7 years ago and started the team.
It's very prestigious to be involved in the Asian Le Mans series. What driver would not want that on their racing CV? The teams, they're working at the highest level of motorsport.
I mean, if you just take, for example, the 3 professional drivers here in the LMP2 category this weekend, we have myself, Ho Pin Tung, who obviously has his CV where he used to be a Formula 1 test driver and competed in Le Mans 24 hours this year.
Basically, Craft Racing is a very experienced team. They did a great job this year, the whole way through. And for sure, the target was this year to learn to understand the car more and more.
We're looking forward to progressing next year, and this is kind of like a toe in the water operation. The team want to move forwards and be successful next year, and the hope is that I will be part of that.
Well, we are a very good team. We're one of the top teams in Asia now, but I want to take our team to be on the top in the world level. We are going to spend the resources, the budget, within the next couple of years and try to get there.
As we enter the closing stages of the race, the season could barely have been any closer, especially in the top LMP2 category, with the championship going right down to the wire. Once Ho Pin Tung got the lead after the final run of pit stops, there was no stopping him. Richard Bradley, who had earlier given Kraft the overall lead, was shadowing Tung for the remainder of the race, though he was on a lap down at this point. Both drivers were driving extremely quickly, clearly enjoying themselves on this challenging track. Watch on board with Bradley as he handles with ease up into 6th gear for the straight, then down into 2nd for the corner to come. Not exactly the kind of thing that you'd be doing at home, but fun to dream about nonetheless. Sepang was the first race that had GTCM entries, and with 3 teams entered, there was worthy competition, which should pave the way for more next year. Host nation Malaysia was to score a 1-2 in the category, with Team Prime Mantle netting 25 points for a win, plus a bonus point for the fastest team in qualifying. While Mike Racing came in 2nd, with the teams finishing 12th and 13th respectively in the overall competition. Unfortunately, Taiwanese team Gamma Racing was unable to finish the race, but they too proved competitive with their division when they were out on track. Sit back and enjoy the final few moments on board with Kraft Soreka. Elsewhere, Japan's Taisan team successfully wrapped up their 4th straight win in the GTE class, but it was the GTC division that was the most competitive all year, with no fewer than 30 drivers racing in the category over the course of the season. Of course, they clinched the title by simply starting the race, but had to take a back seat on the day to Malaysian favourites Clearwater Racing, who won here in their sole appearance this season. But there was a nice consolation as Corsair's 3 drivers, Andrea Bertoloni, Michel Rugolo and Steve Wyatt, shared the Drivers' Championship. A 3rd place finish by Kraft's 007 Aston Martin was enough to give them 2nd place, earning a coveted invitation to next year's 24 Hours of Le Mans race ahead of the AAI Rastrada's number 91 car. A good-natured wave here perhaps from Richard Bradley to Ho Tung Ping as he passed him in top gear shortly before the start of the final lap. With the positions pretty much well set before the finish, it was now all about safely negotiating a way to the finish, and in the case of the race leader, making sure that he finished on track rather than winning from pit lane as Gary Thompson did in Korea after misjudging his fuel load. Several drivers eased off towards the end, to ensure that they could conserve whatever fuel and tyres they had left to make it to the checkered flag. And after 3 hours, they didn't have long to go with just 1 lap left to go racing. Others, though, were still competing right to the very end, with some drivers posting consistently fast times, even in the race's final lap. After a long and rewarding season, it was good to see drivers and teams fighting to the very end. Once the clock hits 3 hours from the start, the lead car completes its current lap and the results are official, pending all necessary post-race technical checks. An emotional end to a fantastic debut season, capped by a stunning comeback from Team Oak. Beaten in both the first 2 races, despite setting the fastest time in qualifying, Oak bounced back with a win in Zhuhai, and victory here sealed the championship by a mere 2 points. China's David Cheng took home the Drivers' Championship, pipping Great Britain's James Winslow by the same margin, 89 points to 87. Congratulations to all the teams and drivers who successfully completed their first Asian Le Mans Series season. And here are the results after 3 hours of racing at Sepang. Ho Ping Tung takes Oak to their second win of the season, as Clearwater Racing win the GTC category. Akira Ida takes the Team Tyson Ken Endless to their GTE win, while Dilanta Malagamua takes the win in the GTC AM category.
It was a great race, great finale for this championship. It was a long stint, more than 2 hours. We were quite far behind KCMG, so we knew we had to do an alternative strategy. Every lap pushed to the maximum. Actually, it was never really a threat anymore, so yeah, extremely happy. Oak Racing Team Total, amazing season.
It certainly has been a very memorable year indeed. After 4 rounds and 12 hours of racing, the series comes to a close, but it's been a fantastic effort by all the drivers out on track and all the team members throughout the course of the season. And we'd like to thank all of them for their hard work, especially our partners as well for their support along the way. It's been a fantastic 2013 season, especially for Oak Racing, who managed to win the overall series championship. A big congratulations to them, and we'll leave you with an idea of what's in store in 2014.
Words that I would think of that would sum up the first year of the Asian Le Mans Series are firstly establishment. The fact that we've got off the ground and we've put a flag in the ground, I think is a very important, significant step for us. The next is probably partnership. You know, the ability to develop partnerships across the board with teams, local race partners in different countries, TV communication partners, and of course maybe the final one, passion. You know, we want to do things in a passion in life and do things we enjoy, and certainly for me it's been a very passionate experience to go through the first year, and hopefully we'll continue to in the future. For us, I think there's a clear objective that we want to set forward going into 2014. One of the key objectives we have is obviously building the number of cars and the grid we have for next year. I think the most noticeable thing about the 2014 schedule is we're adding one more race in Shanghai at the Shanghai International Circuit to, I think, add to the overall prestige and quality of the calendar. We started on the path of the Asian Le Mans Series with the governing body, the ACO. I think one of the fundamental factors behind the series was it must be a spur to develop Asian motorsports. Firstly, on a more, I think, visible front, that's attracting Asian teams to race at a higher level of motorsports. And I think we've already started to do this, and we should do that more. And also those teams bringing along Asian drivers. So you know, our rule that makes it compulsory to have at least one Asian driver in each car makes it a must-do that Asians have to be involved. P3 is an initiative from the ACO to basically create an entry-level prototype that is more economic, that gives more people the opportunity, both teams and drivers, to become involved in racing and Le Mans racing. I think broadcast in TV is a very important part of, you know, getting the message across. And we're very fortunate in our first year to have established relationships with Fox Sports and also some other local deals in Japan and Korea and China. Our partnership community is manifold. It's our teams, it's our sponsors, it's our TV partners, all coming together, I think, with a really, really good attitude and common goal to push this forward. And certainly with the thanks of those partners, we really have established ourselves. And I now feel probably at this point of time more optimistic about the future of Asia Le Mans Series than I have at ever stage. The feeling from all our partners and all our colleagues is extremely positive at this time.